To be canon or not to be canon? That is the question. Ever since this idea of canons began, there have been some questions around it, and I want to talk about what it actually means to be canon and what its impact on Star Wars will be going forward. Welcome to Star Wars Uplink. Quote, "This and all other products that take place after the events depicted in Return of the Jedi are the author's vision of what may have happened. The true fate of the heroes and villains of the Star Wars universe remains the exclusive province of George Lucas and Lucasfilm." Copyright 1992. This was the belief of the extended universe in the 90s. At the beginning of what became the extended universe was this idea that, hey, George Lucas is going to make the things that are the true Star Wars. That is his vision, that is his creation. Everything else, they're legends. They're things that could have happened in the Star Wars universe. They're things that might have happened in the Star Wars universe. And they're things that might never happen in the Star Wars universe. There's this idea that Legends is this ineffable thing. This idea that Legends content was so much better than what is made in canon. And while I agree for a lot of it, there is a depth and reality and just heaviness when it comes to good versus evil in the Legends content that I just do not think is in the Star Wars that we get today. And that's not necessarily a criticism of the Star Wars that we get today. It's just a difference of opinion. It's a difference of what I personally like to see. If you look at the dark side in Legends versus the dark side in Disney Star Wars, there are two different things there. But you may like one and you may like the other. It is completely up to you. But I want to talk about this idea that ever since the beginning, Star Wars canon is what is on the screen. And if you want to take it a little bit further, the only thing that is Star Wars canon is what is created by George Lucas. But first, a side tangent on this idea of what is on the screen. If you really take it at face value, only the movies are canon. The things that are the true canon in Star Wars, according to this little copyright thing at the end of or beginning of a Legends book from the 90s, is the only things that are created canon, and I'm using air quotes here, are the things that are in the movies. The things that George Lucas and Lucasfilm Limited specifically create to be in a movie theater. So under that guise, the idea that Ahsoka with Mandalorian or even Andor and Obi Wan and Book of Boba Fett, everything on Disney Plus isn't canon. Now, this whole idea of canon is kind of funny when you think about it, because this fake Star Wars wizard thing is more real than this other fake Star Wars wizard thing. And I think there is opportunity to take that a little bit further. I think that's a little bit diminutive in the idea of canon. Canon offers this idea that it's telling a cohesive story across all mediums. DC is currently trying to do that with its DCU, where you have everything in canon. According to them, is the movies, the animated, the video games, the comics, everything is portrayed by a singular voice actor or actor, and it is cohesive across that entire vision and across that entire timeline. When Disney bought Star Wars in 2012, that was the idea for Star Wars. They would nuke the content. Everything that had been previously made now had the Legends banner, and they were starting anew. They kept only the movies and the Clone Wars and specific animation stuff, and they got rid of everything else. Video games, nope, not canon. Only things that are made after this acquisition are canon. Those favorite books, yeah, those aren't canon either. We may take characters and moments and inspiration from those created pieces previously to this Disney Star Wars acquisition, but they are not canon as of yet. And I think we've all, as fans, have become obsessed with this idea of canon. That this idea that everything has to be the one true source, when stuff like Star Wars Visions has shown that that's not necessarily true. In fact, some of the not canon things are even more inspired and more enjoyable than the canon things are. And there's even in the extended universe, in terms of the books, there's this idea of Star Wars, a certain point of view. That series of books are alternate storytellings, legends, and materials that necessarily aren't canon, but could have happened or might have happened, or are just fun variations of stories we already know. Dave Filoni talks about this idea when it comes to George Lucas' perception of Star Wars. George Lucas's mindset was, if I did not create it, it's fan fiction. And Dave Filoni ran with that, including the stuff that Dave Filoni worked on. Rebels, in his mind, would have been fan fiction. There are these ideas and stories that he wanted to tell, but anything outside of what he specifically worked on was not going to take into account the stories that he was going to tell. But why am I talking about any of this? Why does it matter? Well, my viewpoint is I think we need to get away from this idea that everything that is made in Star Wars is taken as seriously as it needs to be. I think there needs to be some freedom in the storytelling aspects. I think you need more of the Andor style storytelling, where it takes this idea, makes a good story, and then puts it into Star Wars, rather than the reverse, where they're like, let's put all of the Star Wars Clone Wars characters. Ahsoka, she lives forever now. She's in everything. This idea that, hey, Cad Bane, now he is a villain that's going to be in this new era of Star Wars. I think we need to step away from this idea that everything needs to be as interconnected as humanly possible, and get into this viewpoint and play around in the toy box, the sandbox that George Lucas created, because when it comes down to it, nothing that is created is actually canon. Unless George Lucas works on it, it's not really Star Wars anymore. It's now Star Wars inspired pieces. And I think we need to take that to the next step. I think we need to see more of these ideas of storytelling of, hey, you know that one character in the new Star Wars thing that we made? Cassian Andor? Let's flesh him out, but also tell just a genuinely good story. I think we need to step away from pummeling every single story that we have with as many cameos and as many fan service moments. And not to say fan service is bad. Fan service can be good, and in fact, I think is necessary for something as wide-reaching as Star Wars is now. But I think we need to have this idea that, hey, this is a funny little Star Wars thing. This is something that was created for kids in the 70s and the 80s, and that's it. It's not this massive cultural thing. It has become this massive cultural thing because of the impact that it has had on the society as a whole and filmmaking as a whole. But in and of itself, it's still a kid's story. And I think I would like to see more of this idea of, let's take the universe itself less seriously, but the storytelling more seriously. I don't know if that makes sense, but I think there's an opportunity for some better stories to be told in Star Wars if we step away from this idea of canon above all else. But let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and as always, check out our podcast, and may the Force be with you.